Very, very warm welcome to everybody to the Navigating Flood Insurance webinar. I would like to begin this evening by acknowledging first the traditional custodians on the lands on which we are meeting today. I am zooming in from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I would like to pay my respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. I also acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Good evening on this balmy, cold Wednesday evening. My name is Shweta Dakin and I'm with Gen West. Welcome to the Navigating Flood Insurance webinar. The webinar is a part of the Maribyrnong Insurance Project, which is an initiative of the Maribyrnong Community Recovery Committee and is delivered in partnership with Gen West and Maribyrnong City Council. Before we jump into the webinar, some housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded, and because of privacy reasons, all the community member logins cameras are switched off to protect privacy. The recording of the webinar will be available online on the Maribyrnong Council website after the webinar is over. We also acknowledge that the conversations today could be of sensitive nature. We have panelists discussing the impacts of insurance and how to navigate insurance. We are very aware that quite a few of the community members here today have experienced and have lived experience of the floods, and we are aware that it could create certain uncomfortable moments. So please do reach out for support after the webinar. We will be putting links in the chat for resources and other avenues for support. While we do have a lot of experts in the room today, we really want to acknowledge that a lot of people joining in today are themselves experts, owing their own lived experience, and we really want to acknowledge that lived experience and expertise in the room today. On that note, I just want to do a little bit of introduction of what this project was that gave birth to this beautiful flood insurance initiative and this webinar. Many of you might be aware that the insurance project actually emerged in response to direct inputs from community members impacted by the 2022 Maribyrnong River floods. We held conversations in both English and Vietnamese with residents who shared their experiences and strongly highlighted a need to better understand and navigate the complexities of flood insurance. What was identified by the community was a gap in clear and accessible information, particularly around what to do before and after a flood, and specifically, what does insurance cover and what does it not cover? In response to those community conversations and the needs highlighted, Maribyrnong City Council, the Maribyrnong Community Recovery Committee, and Gen West co-designed an insurance guide. The guide was in partnership with many experts, including some of them in the room today. So legal experts, financial and recovery experts. But most importantly, we had inputs from flood-affected community members. I would like to shout out to Andrew from the CRC, who is here today, who was the key leading warrior behind this project. And it's thanks to him that we were able to really represent community voices in this. What has emerged from this is a guide, a written document in English and Vietnamese, which provides really practical information about insurance, how to take it out, how to make a claim, and how to navigate the complaints process. We also really recognize the impact of this journey on mental health and well-being, especially during recovery. And so there is resources in the guides to how to navigate that. We would like to first thank all our project experts, CoHealth, Consumer Action Law Centre, Disaster Legal Help Victoria, Financial Counselling Victoria, Australian Red Cross, and West Justice for their contribution to this guide. The guide is available, as I mentioned, in English and Vietnamese on the Maribyrnong City Council website, but also the websites of all our partner agencies, including Gen West. Today's webinar, the Navigating Flood Insurance webinar, is a continuation of this community-led initiative. We are building on that same community feedback, and the aim of this webinar is to provide this information in formats which are easily accessible to community. The insights that were provided to us during the consultation process when the flood insurance guide was being created, I am really happy to also update that that's also been embedded and has informed council advocacy priorities, which really is calling for improvements to the insurance sector based on real life experiences of Maribyrnong residents. We have published some of the advocacy priorities on the council website, and we'll share a link in the chat wherein you can read the priorities. Before I open today's session, I also want to really talk about how the session will flow. In the first bit of the session, we will talk a bit about the advocacy around insurance. We have amazing people in the panel who will talk about all the efforts being made in the sector for sector changes. Post that, we have questions which each expert will answer. These questions have been collected from the community and they were submitted before today. Once we've gone through some of those questions, there is also we will open the panel to questions from people dialing in today. So please feel free to post your questions on this webinar, and we will try our best to get through to them before the webinar ends. Before I share the video, I just want to quickly give a shout out to the panelists that are here with us today. We have three experts who are going to offer really deep insights into insurance and answer community questions around all the navigation that they have had to go through and are continuing to deal with during this process. So we have Liam Volta, who is the Director of Mitigation and Extreme Weather Response from the Insurance Council of Victoria. Hi, Liam. Thanks for waving. We have Kelly Davis, the Disaster Recovery Lead from Financial Counselling Victoria. Hi, Kelly. And we have Joseph Nunwick, Legal Director, Economic and Housing Rights Program from West Justice. Hi, Joseph. In the back end, I do want to give a huge shout out to Georgia and Andy from Maribyrnong City Council, who are the spine behind this webinar today and are working really behind the scenes to make sure everything goes smoothly and all your queries are noted and all the links are posted in the chat. So thanks, Georgia and Andy. Even though we can't see you, we know you're here. Okay, diving straight in. As I mentioned, the first section is around advocacy and around a little bit of an update around what's happening in the sector. I'm going to share a pre-recorded video by Dr. Daniel Molino. He's the member of Fraser, but he's also deeply involved in the parliamentary inquiry into the floods. The video talks a little bit about the changes currently underway in the insurance sector and, more importantly, how the community experiences have informed those changes. Bear with me while I try and share my screen to share the video. It is a tricky, there it is. Please let me know if there are any issues, but it should work.
For Fraser, and it's a great honour to be able to present Daniel Molino, the local member for Fraser, and it's a great honour to be able to present a short video here tonight. Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Can I also acknowledge the important work that GenWest is doing along with Financial Counselling Victoria and West Justice in supporting communities, both after natural disasters, but also in between natural disasters, to provide important information and resilience to communities. And can I thank all the members of the community who have come out to the event tonight. This is a really important set of issues, and it goes without saying that when we see that Taree and the Hunter region is under threat from major flooding after having been hit just a few months ago, this is keeping the issue of natural disasters and flooding in particular right at the top of the national policy agenda. Can I say that the documentation that GemWest produced in conjunction with a lot of important stakeholders, financial counsellors, in addition to legal experts, community support organisations and members of the community. That documentation, I think, is a leading example of how we can provide better information to communities to ensure that they're more aware of their risks and also that they're aware of what they should do should a disaster hit. So I really do want to applaud Jen West in all of the work that it's undertaken in producing the documentation. And of course, I do acknowledge the work that Financial Counselling Victoria and also other stakeholders such as West Justice and others have also put into that documentation. When I was in Taree recently after the floods that occurred a few months ago, I saw that at the insurance hubs, the community hubs, which included local government, but also the ICA had set up a hub, that there was much clearer information being provided to people on what they should do in the aftermath of a natural disaster than had been the case in the past. And I think this is all pointing in the right direction. But I think it's also true to say that more work needs to be done in this space. One of the major areas of work that's being examined at the federal level is work to strengthen regulation around claims handling and dispute resolution. So we're currently looking at the code being strengthened. That's work that's being undertaken by the ICA, but I'm very keen for community organisations and for legal representative organisations to feed into that important work. And I'm keen to talk to members of my community to get your ideas as to how that process should be undertaken. I also want to say that mitigation remains a key priority of the federal government. The federal government is committing $200 million a year to mitigation. And in addition to that, after particular natural disasters, there are resilience programs that we have also worked on. But that $200 million a year through the Disaster Ready Fund is being informed by the best possible data and modelling through the insurance industry, but also through NEMA and the BOM and other organisations to make sure that we're spending on the right projects, that we're prioritising and getting the best bang for our buck. This is a really complex policy area. I want to applaud all of the initiatives that have been coming out of my community, and I want to continue to listen to all of the key stakeholders in my community to make sure that as federal policy evolves in this area, we're getting the best possible outcomes for our community. Thanks.
What a lovely statement, and how nice and encouraging to hear about all the changes being made in the sector, especially in response to community feedback, which actually leads beautifully into our first section, where we will speak with all the three expert panelists about advocacy and what can we expect from the sector in the future. I'm going to start with you, Liam. As I mentioned before, Liam Walter is the Director of Mitigation and Extreme Weather Response with the Insurance Council of Victoria. Good evening, Liam. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Shweta, and g'day to everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. As Shweta said, my name's Liam Walter. I've been with the Insurance Council for coming up 4 years. I've been in the insurance industry for about 22 years, though. So I have lots and lots of experience with disaster response and claims processes. So I'm very confident I'll be able to answer any questions that come my way this evening. Just wanted to take a little moment to talk through what the ICA, as we call ourselves, does, and some other organisations that are also really important sort of to our sector as well. So the Insurance Council of Australia, ICA, we're the peak body. You might have heard that term before. So we're the organisation that represents the general insurance industry in Australia. General insurance is things like cars, homes, businesses. It's not health insurance. It's not the compulsory third-party insurance that you might have on your car. It's not life insurance. So it insures things, right? The Australian Securities and Investments Commission so ASIC, as they're called. They are the regulator of the insurance industry. So their role is to monitor, the activities of insurers in Australia and make sure that they're abiding by the rules. And in fact, they will take action against insurers in the courts, which can lead to fines, of many millions of dollars, actually, where insurers are, really doing the wrong thing. The other organisation that I wanted to mention is the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, AFCA. They're often called. That's the independent body that handles complaints for the insurance industry. So I just thought it was important to set that scene first up. It was really great to hear from Dr. Molino that acknowledging that there has been some changes, and very much so, and I'm sure there's actually folks online tonight that provided evidence into the parliamentary inquiry. Your voices were absolutely heard through that process and are ultimately driving change. Dr. Molino called out one of the key examples that we saw we could get to really quickly, which was adding to and improving the information that's available to policyholders immediately following events. So it's something that we've put a great deal of work into, and that includes engaging more closely with councils as well following disasters. Councils are, the closest to communities, so a really good channel for sharing of information. Insurers have been working really hard on their resourcing as well. So getting much more precise in their forecasting of how many claims they might expect to receive and making sure that their resourcing levels, match that as best as possible. And there's two larger pieces of work that are ongoing. One is related to what we call, or is commonly called, vulnerability. So this is where a customer has some specific need that will, if met, will help them receive exactly what they're entitled to, under the policy. And there's a whole range of, different things in there. That's a very large piece of work that ICA is helping industry develop. And then again, as Dr. Molino mentioned, the General Insurance Code of Practice is under review. It's reviewed every 4 years or so, but this time around it will be a very significant review with lots of recommendations coming out of the parliamentary inquiry to feed into it, and there'll be a very broad consultation through that as well. So thanks so much for the time, Shweta, just to give a bit of an overview of some things that have been going on. Back to you.
Thanks, Liam. I'm not sure if you're the right person, but Dr. Molino also mentioned about the hubs. Would you be the right person to shed more light on what that action is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes, I certainly can. Yeah, so I guess as part of the it crosses a couple of the things that I spoke to there, passing on of information or sharing of information, and also, related to community need. In the past, we always try to get into the recovery hubs or the recovery centres, as they're called, that are generally set up by councils or run by the state agencies. Sometimes those don't quite meet our needs or our policyholders' needs. So what we have set up is, I guess, the capability to create our own space that's really focused on insurers and insurance customers. So that's something that has arisen over the last bit over 12 months. So where we really identify a community need, we can sort of be masters of our own destiny, if you like, in that regard. We can, rent a space for 2, 3, 4 weeks, that is just focused on insurance, and sort of be available for insurance customers when they need us.
Beautiful. So if I was to just summarize what I have gathered is definitely a lot of work in working closely with councils. There is a lot of work being going on updating the code of practice, and of course, setting up actual physical hubs in recovery centers or closer to community to really customize and support communities. That's
Absolutely.
beautiful. Thank you so much. And one quick one before I move to Kelly and Joseph. As the ICA, what role do you play on monitoring the changes and whether they're being enforced? Would that be something that comes under your remit and you can shed some light on?
Yeah, so the Insurance Council of Australia, as I set out before, we represent the general insurance industry. Most of the, well, all of these things that we've spoken to are industry level issues. So, so they're not just related to one insurer, it's all insurers. So we're very much involved in coordinating those pieces of work. And as part of that, we're thinking through and working through how we'll sort of hold ourselves accountable, if you like, to report, back to the community at large around how those sorts of, how those initiatives are going, and, how the implementations are going. Where those, and some of these things will sort of be regulation or changes to regulation. Where that's the case, it will be ASIC that will monitor. Ultimately, once those things have been implemented or those changes have been made, ASIC will then carry that forward and monitor and hold insurers to account.
Great. Thanks, Liam. That was really clear and simple, which is not always what we get with insurance. On that same note, I'm going to pass around a similar question around advocacy and change in the sector. I might throw it to you, Kelly, first, in terms of as Financial Counselling Victoria, between October 22 to now, and also, with the last few months of the insurance advocacy that we've been working on, what work has Financial Counselling Victoria been doing to advocate for the changes, and what have you seen actually happen?
Thank you, Shweta. Good second question too. Thank you. So just to quickly introduce myself, I'm the Disaster Recovery Lead at Financial Counselling Victoria. We are the peak body, again, that head organisation that supports financial counsellors across the state of Victoria to provide service to communities. Our role is independent and we are there to serve communities. As a little bit of background, for the last 2 years until end of 2024, I worked in flood recovery in Rochester. So similar to Maribyrnong, the entire town went under at Rochester, and they've had significant impact from the October 2022 floods. So from the point of view of Financial Counselling Victoria, our advocacy has included feeding back submissions into the inquiries, both the state and federal inquiries that have gone on, responding to individual insurers about issues that we can repeatedly see that those insurers need to rectify, matters where their claim mismanagement usually is a problem. We also feedback issues, and often it's case studies. So where someone comes to us and says, this is what I've experienced, and they're happy for there to share that lived experience, we feed that back to the regulators that Liam mentioned. So the Australian, I'm going to use acronyms, I'm sorry everybody, the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, and ASIC as well. So we let the regulatory bodies know what we're seeing, what we continue to see the insurers doing. At the moment, we are waiting to hear what will be legislated from the inquiry's recommendations, what will be passed into law, and then what will be left to the insurers to self-regulate, as Liam mentioned. So that means the insurance industry makes a promise that, yep, we're going to uphold these things. We see that the insurance industry was already self-regulated and that hasn't worked. So we're there to hold them accountable to it, as Joseph, who'll follow me, will speak to. He sits in a role like that. Our members currently are working across the state responding to hailstorms, floods, fires, and currently drought. So we continue to see people going through the issues that some people here tonight have lived through. And I think the biggest concern for us is we continue to see on the ground when you're impacted, when your house is damaged, we continue to see some really poor claim mismanagement. So to me and to our organisation and our members, that's something we're really keen to continue to advocate on, that we already know all of these issues. They've been well documented, they've been accepted in most cases, but at ground level, when you're working within communities, we continue to see the repeat behaviour. There are some really good people trying to make change, and change doesn't happen quickly, but there are some areas that need to be immediately changed. So that's our role. We listen to what our members see when they're working with communities, and we feed back to whoever the relevant body is. That's also including MPs, when we see these matters ongoing. So we're in a little bit of a holding pattern. We're still waiting. We need to wait and see what the outcome of the Insurance Council's decision will be as to what they take on, what they don't take on from the parliamentary inquiry recommendations. And we'll continue to hold the insurers to account to make sure that they comply with that code of practice and do the right thing with the communities they're working in.
So from what I gather, you're really close to communities. You notice a lot of the on-ground gaps, and you really advocate from that level. So while there is a lot of work being going on the systemic level, there is still a gap on the on-ground execution of policies, and you really keep a close eye on that too, considering you're very close to community impacted. Beautiful, Kelly. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm going to throw the same question to you, Joseph, a little bit about your role at West Justice's role in this space. And in the last 2 years, what have you advocated for? And today, as of today, what have you noticed has changed or what you're waiting for?
Sure. Thank you, Shweta, and thanks, Liam and Kelly. So yes, I'm Joseph Nunwick. I'm the Legal Director of the Economic and Housing Rights team at West Justice. We're a free community legal centre, and we cover the Maribyrnong LGA as well as Hobsons Bay, Wyndham, and other parts of the West. My team predominantly looks, and it sort of does what it says on the tin. We look at matters that affect people's economic sustainability and their housing sustainability. That can, of course, include matters relating to insurance, housing insurance, but also things like mortgage and rental stress, and rights and laws around that. And we do know that, unfortunately, an issue with an insurance or a disaster can lead into those forms of housing stress. Additionally, we deal with other issues pertaining to goods and services, including other financial services like banking and scams. And we assist with things like fines and infringements, motor vehicle accidents, and a particular focus on people who are experiencing economic abuse and dealing with people who they are alleged to owe money to or they are facing hardship with after leaving a violent relationship. But moving to the question at hand, and the areas for improvement and development, but noting now there is nothing, for example, stopping an individual insurer from electing to pursue an additional policy option or range of support around something at any time. It is great these standards are being introduced, but it's not an excuse for inaction, I would say, where an insurer or a sector identifies a trend and they could develop or address it by a quick mechanism. But yes, the General Insurance Code of Practice, that's a set of shared obligations that insurers commit to follow, and that should, in theory, be consumer-facing and friendly. But the bones of the law underneath are extremely important in that fallback if something goes wrong. At the code level, a huge amount of our focus is on accessibility improvement. Insurers, and they're not alone in this as a financial service, have increasingly become digital first often. Of course, there are these moments where they rally and there are close public centres for gathering and contacting people. But we recognise that our language and digital divides aren't going anywhere. And they're certainly not going anywhere in the West where we live and work. So when we think about the vulnerability framework in insurance, we think we need to recognise that those barriers can really prejudice and affect claims. It can be that people don't know how to get the information to the right place. They can't seek updates and act on them easily due to email access. They need the assistance of an interpreter to effectively explain the basis of the claim in a way that is clear and does not lead to misunderstandings at the start. And they need decisions explained in a way they can act on. We'd love to see a fixed timeline for claim settlement. This is one of the time frames in the General Insurance Code that's presently a bit confusing, but we think either make a decision within the 12 months and let the person decide what to do and move on, or if you've taken that long, we say allow that claim. The sort of fallbacks, I'm not saying it happens often, but for example, a claim taking longer because an insurer suspects fraud. Move on that, let the insured know what you're thinking and let it move forward. And then I think standardized terms and consistency, no matter where you go with an insurer, on things like certain different kinds of water and vent and damage, as well as pre-existing defects, wear and tear, reasonable maintenance, phrases that we see bandied around a lot and that I think our questions will get to tonight. I think what's more important still is, even if you have those terms clearly defined and there is a shared understanding and education piece about what reasonable maintenance is to people who insure their homes, it's important that the insurance decisions are made fairly on all of that information. So if there is an issue with maintenance, it does not act as a technicality or bar to a claim where the event is actually unrelated to that particular question of maintenance.
Beautiful. Thanks, Joseph. What really stood out for me was the accessibility and the digital dependence. We worked very closely in the last 2 years with, people from either a migrant background or with language barriers, or even, older community residents who are not able to navigate the digital landscape. And that's such a good point to advocate for and work on. And hopefully that on ground, that, immediate reaction, the hubs and all of that will help address that. Thank you everyone for that advocacy update. We're going to now move into answering questions. I really want to highlight here that a lot of these questions were put together and really emphasized by one of the, as I said, the warrior behind this project, who is here with us today, a community member, a member of the CRC, Andrew Montero. Thanks, Andrew, for really bringing these questions together, for really championing the fact that community needs these answers, not just the Maribyrnong community who have already been through this experience, but also people who might experience this in the future. Thanks, Andrew.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we're going to dive into questions. I'm going to start with you, Liam. A basic question: what steps do insurance providers have to take immediately after a flood?
Thanks, Shweta. I might just point out that, again, as I mentioned before, sort of our uplift in the types of information that's available. Our website, so the Insurance Council of Australia's website, has a help in disasters section that folks might want to check out. Certainly, their insurer is likely to have a similar type of service, if you like, on the website there. What steps should an insurer take immediately following a disaster? Look, they'll be looking to take information about what happened in the first instance, to understand what services might be required, what specialists might be required to start and get to the work of really getting to the bottom of what happened and what damage has been caused. Typically, they should also be understanding what we often call the habitability of a house. So whether it's fit to live in, and if there's any emergency accommodation requirements. We talk about emergency accommodation sort of being the first couple of weeks or so, and then temporary accommodation as sort of being a longer term, so months possibly, depending on what needs to happen on the claim. So the emergency accommodation needs generally in the first instance. They should also be looking at what immediate sort of financial needs there are. So that might mean considering processing what we often call an emergency payment. So that could be several $100s to a few $1,000s potentially, depending on what people's needs are. And then also looking at what work could or should be done to a home, to prevent any further damage or in fact to make it safe. So we generally refer to that sort of as a make safe. So, collecting information, understanding your sort of accommodation, living needs, considering emergency payments, and make safes and those sorts of things are what I would sort of call out.
Can you elaborate on what is actually done in a make safe? Just for the audience, it is mentioned in the guide on page 44, and we will keep putting those links in the chat. But Liam, could you quickly talk to us about what is done in a make safe and how quickly is the insurance company required to attend the property for a make safe? What is the timeline there?
Yeah, so a make safe will really be dependent on the type of, the damage that's occurred. So an example could be if a lower level was flooded, say, but the top level is okay and has all the services that are required to make it livable. So, bathrooms, kitchens, that sort of thing. The make safe work there possibly, could be to isolate electrical circuits, so that the upstairs could be lived in, and the downstairs is sort of separated. It could also be things like strip outs, as we call it. So one of the really important things is to get the damaged, wet, soggy things out of the house so that drying can start and to, eliminate any health, sort of concerns. If that sort of thing is required, and generally there'll be some of that required following a flood, that should happen fairly quickly. Now, there's not a time frame that insurers are bound to have that happen, but it should be, it should be done fairly quickly, right, before it sort of dries or starts to really cause problems. So yeah.
So if it was a flood, what is best practice when you say quickly? Any range?
Oh, within a couple of weeks.
Right.
Within a couple of weeks or sooner, would be. It really needs to be before things start to dry out, so that the damaged things start to dry out or start to really spoil. So depending on the weather conditions, far north Queensland, for example, is very, very hot and humid. So those sorts of conditions, you need to act really quickly. A drier, cooler, environment, there's a little bit more time, but talking, it should be happening in weeks, certainly, as opposed to months, for example.
Thanks, Liam. I'm going to move on to the next set of questions, and this is for you, Joseph. We got a lot of different feedbacks, because when you own a house, your experience is very different to when you rent a house. The first question is about, when you're a renter, what are the key things to consider in relation to insurance as somebody renting a place? Did we have Joseph or did we lose him? Okay, we'll wait for Joseph to come back. I'm going to pass on to you, Kelly. You gave us a really good idea of what does a financial counselor do? It's also mentioned in the guide, but I want to take that further into. So a key question is, are financial counselors available to speak with after the disaster at a recovery center, or how do you do your outreach?
Okay, thank you, Shweta. I'm just going to quickly recap on what a financial counsellor does because I didn't give the full explanation. So financial counsellors provide free, independent and non-judgmental support to people in financial difficulty. We recognise insurance is a financial product, as Joseph mentioned, so that includes assisting people with insurance matters and insurance disputes. And we help across all areas of natural disaster. The entire state is covered by financial counselling, so you should be able to access someone in the area you live in. We need to recognise that not in all events are there recovery centres. So what happened in Maribyrnong was classed as a catastrophic event, and there was a recovery centre set up, which is great. It's a central place within your council that you can go, and all of the services come and attend that hub, hopefully, and you can meet them there or make arrangements to meet elsewhere if you have concerns about privacy. So where there is a hub, yes, financial counselling is normally represented. There are normally one of our members attending. If there's not a hub, there may be some other arrangements made by council, and so there may be a town hall or something like that you can see people. There might be community events that financial counsellors would attend, so you can speak with them and talk to them about getting their assistance and their advocacy support. And failing all of that, financial counsellors do service your area regardless. So in some of the smaller storm events where there's not as many houses impacted, there might not be a centralised response, but you can still reach out to the agency in your area. So I just want to be really clear that in Maribyrnong and surrounds, that Anglicare provide financial counselling, and many people here today may have spoken to the Anglicare financial counsellors. But if you can't find someone, if there's not a recovery hub, or you're not comfortable going into a recovery hub, you just can't find how to speak to a financial counsellor, you can call the National Debt Helpline on 1300 007 007. You can also use a tool on their website to help find one. So you should be able to find one in your area, as well as other service providers, so mental health services, community legal services, the Insurance Council. The insurers themselves should refer you to a financial counsellor if you feel that would be of benefit to you. So just to be really clear, we can advocate with insurers on your behalf. So if you're having a dispute with your insurer and you're finding it really overwhelming talking to them, we can meet with you, understand your needs, and talk to the insurer on your behalf.
So you can even challenge the decision from an insurer or support.
Absolutely. It's well recognised that when you've experienced a weather event that has damaged or destroyed your home, and there's significant impact on your life. Joseph talked before about the fact that also impacts people financially. You know, maybe you're not working because of that same weather event. Paying your mortgage is really difficult. Paying your bills, your electricity may be down because of the event. So financial counsellors can talk to you about your options regarding all of those issues. But as far as challenging a decision your insurer has made, we strongly encourage you to speak to either a financial counsellor or a community lawyer before you accept an offer from an insurer, particularly a cash settlement offer. You have experienced a natural disaster, your mental health is impacted, even if you don't always realise it. You're probably experiencing a little bit of trauma from the event, and you're being expected to make a major life financial decision. So please seek help. But if you feel that even if you've accepted a cash settlement and you feel it's unfair, please speak to a financial counsellor or a community lawyer, because that can still be challenged. We can have a look at what you received, and if it wasn't fair, we can speak to the insurer, and if we can't resolve that with the insurer, then we can take that matter to the Australian Financial Complaints Authority. So please don't just think, I just have to take this. Sometimes people say to us, it was such a big battle with the insurer, I've just taken this cash settlement because I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I can't deal with this any longer. We can step in and help there.
So that's very interesting to know, Kelly, because a lot of what I've also realized is that people hesitate to ask for financial counseling because there's this thing of we've reached a certain point in life in Australia, and we will be okay. That helps seeking behavior and the hesitation to seek financial counseling. So it's really good to know that it's not a reflection on your financial capability. It's just a reflection of the effect of the event on your life. And we found
Just
that
like we
lots.
take, yeah, sorry, Shweta, I was going to say, just like we take our cars to the mechanic to get them serviced,
Exactly.
because that's not our area of knowledge. We don't necessarily know
Exactly.
the car. Sometimes when something happens that impacts your finances, which is completely outside of your control, you might not know how to
Yeah.
fix that, and that's
Yeah.
okay. There is someone that can help you.
Yeah.
So it's no reflection on you. You can't control the weather.
Exactly.
And so please reach out and speak to someone.
And we really found that help-seeking hesitation, especially with communities we worked with. So it's really good to know that it's not a reflection on anything except it's an external factor. It's devastated your life. And please go and get financial counseling. I'm going to segue this into, so a lot of times, we really focus on if you own a house, you have insurance and you navigate it. But I'm going to throw this to you, Joseph. A lot of the questions have also been around if I'm a renter, what are the things I should consider in relation to insurance? What are my rights? What should I
Thanks
keep in
very
mind?
much. I might try to cover as many aspects of the insurance experience for renters as possible, and maybe I'll start with what a renter does not have to do, because this kind of
Okay.
comes up as a misunderstanding sometimes. So you're not required to take out insurance to cover the house on behalf of the landlord, or otherwise in respect to your rental agreement. And that's actually a prohibited term to include in any tenancy contract or agreement in Victoria. Nor should you be doing something like directly paying that premium for the landlord's insurance in that situation. The premium is the landlord's to pay. It may be that some of that cost is formed in what you pay for rent, but the two should be very separate. But the next thing to understand is why, while many landlords do have insurance policies, and that's a good idea, we think it's an appropriate thing to do. It's there for the landlord's premises and it's there for the landlord's benefit. It will generally cover things like the actual structural damage to the rented property, and it may cover things for the landlord like lost rent. It is very unlikely it is going to extend to the coverage of items belonging to you or for your temporary accommodation if for some reason you were not able to reside in there and had to leave properly. There are pure contents insurance policies available for renters in Victoria and elsewhere in Australia. While it's not my place to endorse or recommend any one, I would note that these do tend to be of a lower cost than the home and contents ones for homeowners, because you're not paying for the premium of the cost of the house itself. But it's a very good idea where you've got valuables, think of your tools of trade and work, collectibles, valuables. One thing that you will want to think about if you do that, though, is the difference between renters and owners of homes are that if I've got a structural problem with the house or something I need to make secure and I own my house, I need to go and sort that out. It's my expense to do so, and it's part of maintenance. And renters are put in a difficult position where there may be things that are making the house unsafe or insecure, and they need to get the landlord to act urgently for a minimum standard or an urgent repair. So when taking out contents insurance as a renter, you just need to be aware of what it requires you to do to manage that, noting that you don't have the power to change things about the house like an owner might. The last thing to note very quickly is that unfortunately in the past, not because of a widespread disaster, but because of other freak accidents, we did see a pattern where renters were being chased for the expense of a house flooding or an apartment flooding or a house burning down after the landlord had claimed on their insurance.
Right.
And we thought it was often quite inappropriate behavior because it was a freak accident. It wasn't something malicious. It wasn't intentional. We've had an undertaking from the ICA after campaigning with Choice in 2021 that would not be something that most insurers do. And we're really hoping that clearly be set down in the general code of practice, that renters are amongst the most vulnerable people. When something happens to damage or destroy the house, they should not face a double whammy after having to leave of being chased for a significant alleged cost.
Um, Thanks a lot there. Liam, do you want to add into that? Is there any update from the renter's perspective, or should I just move on? What do you reckon?
No, Joseph covered it all, I think.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Greta,
Yes.
sorry, could I just ask Joseph a question? Joseph, if I'm a renter and I have a contents policy over my own contents that are in the rented premises, can I get temporary accommodation from the insurer?
Completely depends on the policy, unfortunately. It's not a kind of guaranteed minimum, and it's part of the ones where I really encourage renters to look carefully and shop around for what they're getting and whether it includes some of those protections.
Beautiful. I'm gonna invite Andrew now to really talk about, as I mentioned, Andrew has been a key factor behind this entire project. He navigated the insurance process and has deep lived experience of this process. And Andrew, could I invite you to really talk about, it's been a deep learning curve for you. So what has been your biggest learnings as a community member who has navigated the insurance process over the last 2 years?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, rather than going into technical aspects of it, I think I want to talk basically overwhelming in terms of the what do you call the mental health of going through the whole process. One thing is, claiming an insurance, it can be very overwhelming. It's not easy, right? So the best way to do it is you got to take steps, clear steps. You need to have clear steps in terms of how you want to manage it. So you need to understand if your house is flooded, basically the structure of your house starts from under the ground till wherever it's been impacted, right? Very often people don't think about those aspects. For example,
Right.
if your house is on stumps, you got footings underneath, which is a concrete block with the footings done. So you need to think about all these things, right? So you need to go in detail in terms of understanding, okay, what are the things that I need to do, to make sure that I do a proper assessment or get the insurance to do an assessment on my property. That will definitely help you in terms of your mental health, right? And
Right.
I realized the experience because people very often, like I think some said, went and got a claim settled very quickly. I've realized afterward, my God, actually we didn't do a full assessment on the property, right? So it is important for you to go step by step to understand what needs to be done. And especially when you're dealing with the insurance people, remember these people are also human beings, right? So it can be very emotive, can be very angry. There can be you can get all the ups and downs, right? Try and avoid deal with facts rather than being emotive, right? That's the best way because because at the end of the day, it's better than going to AFCA and the lawyers if you can get it settled by the insurance company itself. That's one thing but it's not easy. I'll tell you something. It is not easy because you have communities saying, "Oh, why is your claim taking so long? Why is this happening? What is it happening? Why you're taking so long?" And then you have the pressure of the family saying, "Why everyone's getting it? You're not. Why it looks like you're delaying the whole process." So you got to be very careful, be very calm. You got to understand. You got to manage that. You got to control that whole thing for yourself. So the only way you can control it is having all the facts in front of you.
Right. Thanks, Andrew. A really interesting highlight on the the balance of maintaining your mental health after a crisis to be able to take decisions, and really focusing also on self-care, which is very difficult to do when you have a crisis, you have family, you have children, you have so many things you need to look after. But we tend to forget self-care and we tend to forget seeking support. So thank you really for pointing out that need to also look at yourself and your own self-care. You mentioned AFCA, and I'm going to actually answer a question which is there in the chat. And I'm going to address this to you, Liam, because you mentioned AFCA for the first time. And we have a question here which says, you speak about AFCA. When or how do we approach them? Is there a criteria to meet before we can contact AFCA?
Yeah, I think just to kind of, emphasize sort of what's just, been discussed, it's a hugely shocking experience, to go through a flood, and it will flip your life, upside down. And I just want to kind of reiterate that, you shouldn't think that you need to do that all on your own. And, Kelly and Joseph's organisation and many others, are there, to provide, that help, and support. So in relation to AFCA, so the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, there's a two-step complaints process that exists, for insurance claims. The first step is asking for your insurer to review their decision. So I sort of often think of that as, your insurer gets a last chance, if you like, to review their decision. And a complaint can be anything that you're not satisfied with. So it can be, the service, that you're receiving, the quality of the service, how timely that service is. It could be in relation to the assessment. So, you're not satisfied that the assessment covers all of the things that it needs to cover. It could be the amount of a settlement that's being offered. So it can be for anything. So the first step is to ask your insurer to review that decision. Your insurer is obligated then to do a review, and they'll either stand by their original decision, or they might decide on review that they'll change it. If you're not satisfied with the outcome of that, that's when AFCA can then take up the matter. Now, that's not to say that you can't call AFCA at any time prior to then, right? So you can call AFCA if you have any questions about what their process looks like when they, take a matter on. Generally speaking, though, there are some exceptions, but generally speaking, they'll inform you that, your insurer has that, right, if you like, to do that first level of review, and then from there, AFCA will review it.
Beautiful. Thanks, Liam. I'm gonna also get Kelly to throw in some, how can financial counselors support in that process, and what is your take on this, Kelly?
Yeah, thank you. So we do support people through from the beginning of the dispute that they may have with the insurer till the time it's settled, as do community lawyers. So that will include a complaint to AFCA. It may be that you're lodging more than one complaint with AFCA. You don't just have to lodge one complaint. So in the very beginning, I'll give you an example of a client I worked with. The client came to me and they had tried to come to agreement with the insurer on what works needed to be completed. So if you've experienced an event, you might find that you had a scope of works document, which is a quote from the insurer's builder saying these are all the things that need to be repaired and this is what it will cost. They'd done multiple revisions of that, and they couldn't agree. The insurer and the client couldn't agree on what was fair and reasonable. So we lodged a complaint at AFCA. So first of all, we lodged a complaint with the insurer. We still didn't agree. So we lodged a complaint at AFCA. The financial counsellor did that on behalf of the client. They no longer felt able to do that themselves. We came to terms. The insurer made some promises around that. So the complaint was closed. 3 months later, the insurer didn't meet the promises that they made. So we made another complaint. And then the client did take a cash settlement and then found out a few things had been missed. So we went back to the insurer and they didn't agree again. So we made another complaint. So we equally on that one complained about claim mismanagement, the way the insurer handled the claim and spoke to the client. So it's not a one-stop shop. If you go to AFCA about one issue and you resolve that, you may still have another issue. So you're not stopped from making another complaint with the insurer, then a complaint with AFCA. It's really good to get advice there, but please be aware that AFCA is designed for people to access themselves. So you don't need representation. You can do that yourself. So you may wish to speak to someone like a financial counsellor, like a community lawyer, just to understand your rights. And from that conversation, you may feel that you can take your complaint to AFCA. So you can do it yourself, or you can get a free and independent advocate to support you through that process. I have just put in the chat to you, Shweta, a link to making a complaint at AFCA. So if we could maybe share that with everybody. AFCA's designed to be really clear and accessible information. So as I think Liam said, you can call them as well and just say, hey, I've got questions. So there are plenty of opportunities for you to ask about how to lodge a complaint with them. And we should point out, lodging complaints at AFCA is free. It doesn't cost you anything. So it's not like a court. It's not a court. It is a free process for you, free and independent.
And Kelly, what in your experience, sorry, Liam, I will come back to you, but I just wanted to close that loop of, in your experience, how fast is the turnaround with AFCA?
Unfortunately, there currently are delays at AFCA because we've had lots of natural weather events across the country, and AFCA works across the country. It can be that it's a few months to wait until that claim is looked at by AFCA. So until they start communicating with you and trying to get all of the parties to agree. But in that time, I encourage you to continue, lodge at AFCA, lodge a complaint, and continue to speak to the insurer and try to resolve the matter.
Right.
So sometimes when you lodge that complaint at AFCA, it's like saying to the insurer, hey, I'm really serious about this.
Right.
I'm going to fight for my rights, and keep having that conversation with them about what you think is fair. And that may be enough to settle it. Yeah. And if it's not, then it's definitely worth waiting, because I like to think that getting a fair and reasonable settlement means you can build your whole house. If you don't get a fair and reasonable settlement, let's say it's $50,000 less, what room of your house will you do without? Will you live without a laundry? Will you live without a kitchen? A couple of bedrooms? So everybody has the right to a fair payment, and that's what AFCA ensure.
Yeah. Thanks, Kelly. Liam?
Yeah, thank you so much. It just occurred to me, and Kelly, good on you for adding in the bit there that the process is at no cost. I just wanted to sort of emphasise that. I also really like the point there, Kelly, which is something that, you know, I always sort of try and emphasise, is have the conversation with your insurer. Let them know what you need. Let them know what that you're not satisfied with. Again, you know, if that feels, you know, like too daunting a task, or you need some help with that, there's people there that can, you know, help you keep that communication up. There's just one last thing, a common thing that people say when I speak to them is, oh, I'm concerned about making a complaint, you know, because, you know, my insurer will hold it against me or something. You know, I'll be sort of put to the bottom of the pile if I make a complaint. The regulators and AFCA would look very, very, very poorly on insurers if they saw evidence of that kind of conduct. It's a, you know, well-established, well-defined sort of process. So, you know, policyholders should feel confident to, you know, raise those concerns and you know, escalate those complaints. They need a hand, you know. Kelly and Joseph's teams, you know, can help out.
We've just actually got a question from outside of Victoria, which basically wants to know if are there similar services available to Financial Counselling Victoria to navigate AFCA outside Victoria. Liam, would you or Kelly, whichever of you is able to address this, what's available, what support pathways are available outside Victoria?
Yeah. So financial counsellors work across the country. I'll just jump in there. Sorry, Liam. Financial counsellors work across the country. So if you're struggling to find one in your area, there's Financial Counselling Australia. If you contact them, they'll be able to assist you. And I'll find a number and put it in the chat for Financial Counselling Australia. Yeah. So if you're in Victoria, we've already given you the contact details of National Debt Helpline or Find Financial Counsellor. If you're outside of Victoria, have a look at the Financial Counselling Australia website.
Beautiful, and we'll put that link and circulate it. Thank you.
There's also there's also the state-based legal services as well. So, you know, in Queensland and New South Wales, for example, you know, Legal Aid Queensland, Legal Aid New South Wales are very strong. So they're, you know, they can provide similar sort of advocacy, but provide those sort of legal services. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I know we are running short on time, but we are monitoring the chat. So please keep your questions coming. We are monitoring the chat and we will keep bringing up the questions, but we also have a huge list of questions which was pre-submitted. I'm going to move into the conversation around make safe and cleaning the property and mold. So that's the topic we're going to explore now. The first question is, I'm going to start with the make safe process. So Liam, I will throw this to you. It's about, can I clean my property before make safe begins? And also, or actually, what is your recommendation on that about not cleaning the property until it's, gone through the make safe process?
Yeah, look, cleaning up following a flood has been one of the real key bits of information or key bits of information that we've tried to focus on and getting that into communities to make sure that the right information gets around. It's one of those that there seems to have been in the past a lot of misinformation getting around. To put it really, really, really simply, absolutely clean up.
Oh, right. So you do clean up before the make safe.
Absolutely clean
Right.
up. If it's safe to do so and you feel you're capable of doing it. And what we mean by sort of cleaning up is, it's a horrible, horrible task to do. But it's moving all of the flooded stuff out of the home. The quicker that can be done, the better, for a whole range of reasons. I mean, one is that it gets that muddy and waterlogged stuff out of the home, which, prevents further damage and can prevent things like mold. It also, and, every person that I've spoken to that, has done that early on gives people a sense of, well, things are moving on, getting on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Getting that all out of the property, giving it a bit of a hose out and that sort of thing. What insurers ask is for photos. So take photos of everything, as many as you can. There's not sort of too many, but yeah, absolutely cleaning up is really important. Now, if it's not safe to, so in the immediate aftermath, there could be issues around electricity. Services need to be checked and that sort of thing. So it needs to be safe. You need to feel like you are capable and confident to do it. If you don't feel capable and confident to do it, or if it's not safe, then be having that conversation with your insurer, about getting help with that.
Thanks, Liam. And actually related to that, Joseph, this is more about what if there are signs of molds or defects multiple years after the rebuild? What rights do I have? How do I address that?
Okay, yes, that will depend on a couple of things. One is, and look, maybe this is also an important point to talk about. One of the significant things that happens with cash settlements, in that if you have the insurer directly performing the works through their panel of repairers, the people that they choose, then no matter how long it's been, it's a good idea to go back to see what your insurance policy says about what it guarantees on those. I've heard of some that even express a lifetime guarantee for workmanship and things like that, and then begin to talk to the insurer about what you're noticing, where, and start that process. However, if you do end up in the cash settlement process, or you've otherwise elected to manage those works yourself, you have contracted directly with a builder in such a situation, you do have rights, but you are left to try to enforce them. What I can say about expectations for domestic building contracts, all of them have an implied warranty, so an implied guarantee, in terms of a reasonable standard of workmanship that extends to the materials used. So including if the wood was not treated and it starts to allow moisture and ingress, that situation also goes back to the builder. Those warranties apply for a period of 10 years from a completion of the work. Now, one thing that can happen, which can be really stressful, is that it's not uncommon for some businesses to go out of builders to go out of business, or sometimes vanish off the face of the earth. And that's where there's a requirement for builders who enter into these domestic building contracts to take out insurance, which is a protection in the event that that happens, or if you do get a court or tribunal order telling them that to pay and then they don't honour it. And that can cover structural defects for up to 6 years, and sort of non-structural defects, the kind of cosmetically, this is not what I asked for, it was done in the wrong style or something like that, for a shorter period of time. One of the main things at the top of the bill, if you are engaging a builder yourself, is to really be careful that you're checking the local details, for example, the Victorian Building Authority, that you are dealing with a registered builder, that you can therefore involve the building authority if there are issues, and you should ask to see a certificate of current insurance compliance up front.
Beautiful. Thanks, Joseph. Continuing with that, actually, there is a question in the chat, Liam, which was about, you mentioned the recommendation is to start cleaning. The question here is that has that recommendation to clean straight away changed, or is it an updated recommendation? Because quite a few Maribyrnong residents were told they were not allowed to touch anything until it was assessed. Living in an apartment where some people still live with no flood damage in the building, it was integral to clean ASAP, but they were told not to. And in case we do go through something like this again, will photos be enough? So I think what they're saying is, has it changed? Because at that time they were told not to do it, and are photos actually enough?
Yeah, I understand. Look, in the future, I'm more than happy for you to say Liam from the Insurance Council said that photos are enough. It is enormously frustrating for me, but the answer is no. Actually, that recommendation is not something that has changed, or that instruction isn't something that has changed. For quite a while now, that has been the guidance. And I sort of touched on this before. Unfortunately, during that run of floods, there were breakdowns in communication. We never really got to the bottom of what the problem was, but there were clearly breakdowns in communication, whether that was between customers and their insurers, new staff members that had the wrong information or something like that, whether there were builders that were saying the wrong thing, or assessors that were saying the wrong thing. So unfortunately, no, it's not changed. There were problems. What we've done though is gone to great lengths to make sure all of our members are aligned, on that approach, and that the fact sheets and everything are consistent, and that we sort of prioritise getting that information, particularly from the Insurance Council, into communities immediately. Following events, to make sure that doesn't happen again, because completely understand how frustrating and traumatic that would have been to have confusion around that.
Liam, following up, Joseph, there's a question which I might direct to you. What happens if a new homeowner discovers defects after purchasing a property that was previously flood damaged and repaired by a builder engaged by the former owner?
Oh, I wasn't expecting that one. That's quite an interesting one. Look, I think there are a couple of obligations that sit in different places here. One is that if the former owner is aware of defects, or someone acting on their behalf, like a conveyancer or a real estate agent, is reasonably aware of that. There is an obligation to disclose that information where relevant as part of the Statements in the Sale of Land Act. But also it's really important that a person does do a little bit of their due diligence themselves. It would depend situation to situation. In some cases, you would expect that the building warranty remains the case irrespective of the house changing hands. But again, you need to have the information available, preferably at the time of sale, so you can act and use that information if it becomes necessary in your first few years of purchase.
Thanks, Joseph. Kelly.
Shweta, we actually had that very situation with a homeowner in Rochester. The insurer for the 2022 floods claimed that some of the works hadn't been done properly under an insurance claim that related back to 2011 floods. So the financial counsellor actually managed to track back and speak to the insurer that did the works in the 2011 floods. Now, not going to pretend that this was a good process for, it took, I think, about 18 months. It wasn't my case, so I can't be 100% clear, but it was a long process. But the financial counsellor continued to advocate between the two insurers and settlement was reached. So the previous insurer did come to the party and pay for some of those repairs. As Joseph said, it is a case-by-case basis, and in that case, it was established that some of those repairs had not been done properly after the 2011 floods, and so therefore the new insurer wouldn't warrant them. So
Right.
the other thing that we have relied upon, so that's a very complex process, but can be done. I'd suggest that you go and speak to a professional advocate. The other thing, when you purchased the property, you had a building inspection done and that building inspection said everything was fine and you suddenly discover it's not, you may have a claim against the person who did the building inspection. That was another avenue we pursued on a couple of houses where the property had sold and the works hadn't been done previously. So it's really about exploring all the avenues, and sometimes as part of, as Joseph mentioned, that transfer of the property, sometimes a building inspection these days is quite standard. So if someone signed off that everything's okay and it's not, they're liable. That was their professional opinion.
Which
exactly,
brings me to
Kelly.
the segue. Yeah, sorry, Joseph.
I was just saying exactly.
Right. Which brings me to, it's really clearly emerging the role of the financial counseling support is not just restricted to immediately after the disaster, and it has a much wider remit. Considering we are now in 2025 and the floods happened in 2022, what is available ongoing? Because what we've noticed is a lot of support comes in immediately after the disaster, and then by the time we actually reach this stage, it's all dried out. Services have, finished their funding cycle. So what is available ongoing, Kelly?
It's really tricky, isn't it? That some of these disputes or claims and rebuilds take a long time to settle, and unfortunately, financial counsellors are funded sometimes specifically to work for the disaster event. Having said that, they don't leave your area. So they might have lost a couple of staff, but there'll still be financial counsellors working in your area. So please contact them. You may be eligible for service. I know Anglicare's eligibility, I did check with them today, is that you may have some sort of financial hardship, that's your insurance dispute, and a vulnerability, that's the fact that you're impacted by disaster. So you would be eligible for service. So please reach out. The funding situation has just changed. We're at the end of a financial year. If anyone is in here tonight and they've contacted a financial counselling organisation and they couldn't get into service, so they couldn't speak to a financial counsellor, please feed that back to me, whether that be by you, Shweta, by the Maribyrnong Council. If you can contact FC Vic direct and connect with me, I may be able to connect you with a financial counsellor who can help. I'm sorry I'm being vague, but the funding situation is just changing in the state. But we don't want people thinking that's the end. There's nothing else that can be done. Joseph, I don't know in your area if you...
actually, I was going to ask Joseph. Yeah, what is your service accessibility and how does that work?
We are remaining open for inquiries of this nature. We should note that there might be some sort of flood financial counselling specific ones where a financial counsellor may be the best person because of an array of financial issues that can carefully be looked at, taken apart, thinking about crafting a statement of financial position, building some financial recovery and capability. Our financial counsellors are a bit ring-fenced, but for some of those legal issues involving a dispute with the insurer, or someone else who is providing something like a service in relation to the home or the recovery, that is something that we would be able to have booked in through our consumer clinic.
And Joseph, how does somebody from community access your service?
I will make sure that my phone number's dropped in the chat as well as our email afterwards, but those are the best portals to come through to us and talk to one of our lovely admin people.
So you actually have an open door policy and people can just walk in to access your service.
Open door, but a queue is how I characterize it. We'll book people in for appointments.
Yes,
sometimes
isn't
there
that
might be a
the
few weeks
status?
wait.
Yeah, that's the status, but at least it's accessible. Kelly.
Shweta, we should also mention that sometimes where people receive a significant cash settlement amount and they have a mortgage, that the insurer is required to report that to the bank, and the bank may hold those funds. So if you're having issues with your bank about releasing all of the funds you received under an insurance cash settlement, that's something financial counsellors can advocate with as well. So you get your cash settlement, you think, oh, I just got through that battle with the insurer, you get your cash settlement. Sometimes you can have a battle with the bank you hold your mortgage with about how they're going to manage those funds. So we've seen sometimes people say, banks say, no, we're going to pay part of the mortgage down, which leaves you less money to rebuild. Or maybe they're releasing it like a staggered sort of release as the building progresses. But if you are experiencing financial hardship because of the way the bank is handling your insurance cash settlement, please reach out to a financial counsellor, because that's another area we can assist with.
So the correlation between a big cash settlement and the bank mortgage is also something that you can support with. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
I know we're running out of time, but Andrew, I really wanted to bring you back into this conversation, considering all the body of work you've done and your entire experience. It'll be difficult to summarize, but could I ask you to really tell us what would you do differently next time, or encourage somebody new in the area to consider? What are your top tips there?
Shweta, to be honest with you, the first thing I would probably do is seek help to be calm. That is the most important thing when you're going through this process. You have to be calm no matter what. You got to accept there's going to be ups and downs in this process, right? Once you accept that, okay, I know there's going to be, you think, oh, I've got somewhere, but then you didn't realize, actually, you know what? I've taken 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Okay, I need to go back again and do another thing there. So it is important to be calm. That's the most important thing. The more calm you are, the better you can actually manage the process, right? Because remember one thing, right? If it hasn't killed you, it'll make you stronger, right? That is the most important thing. There's everything can be, you can manage everything else, but your life is the most important thing. Your mental health is the most important thing. And that's one of the reasons why I work with so many people within the community to say, listen, everyone was going through a different process. And I said, listen, take a deep breath, understand exactly what you're doing, right? And then move forward. So I think that's the most important thing. The other thing what I would like is, to be honest with you, is have people who already experienced this to be on a panel to help the next set of people. Like we had in 1974, we had a flood. We didn't have anybody else in that process, right? If we have any experts in that area to say, hey, okay, listen, we've been through this process, this is how you can help, right? And then guide them through all the different channels that we have, right? That'll be a great thing for anywhere it happens in Victoria.
Yeah, beautiful, Andrew. And such wise words. Lived experience and the experience of somebody who's been through it, just priceless. So thank you so much for sharing. We are in the last 7 minutes of our webinar. So what I'd like to do is give all the panelists 1 minute each to really wrap up, whatever, if there are any last insights that you want to share or any key takeaways that you would want to share before we move into the final 5 minutes of wrapping up. So 1 minute each. I'll start with whoever wants to go. Liam, let's throw it to you first.
That's a difficult one. Look, I think having a conversation and open communication throughout the process is sort of really key. I think that's key. Have the conversation with your insurer. Let them know what your needs are. Let them know what's working and what's not working. There's help, and support, there to help you, do that. But just keep the conversation going. And I think that's wisdom for life. That your well-being and mental health has got to be your number one priority. So always focusing on that. I think that's just outstanding. So.
Thank you. That was less than a minute, so I'm going to throw you a question. If you could just wrap up, just, what is the ICA's commitment going forward? Because we have a lot of community members here who are really looking at change. So what can you say is your commitment going forward?
Look, my patch is the extreme weather and disaster response. And so long as I'm in this role, the commitment is to iterating, trying new things and moving forward to try and close the gap on these issues more broadly, at the ICA level and that sort of bigger industry level. We're really, really focused on getting the work done that needs to be done and bringing our members and communities and other stakeholders along the journey on the code of practice review, which is really, really important, and also that vulnerability piece of work to make sure that we can better identify needs and have the solutions in place. So
we can be hopeful that councils will be more closely working with ICA. We will be brought on the journey of the code of conduct changes and have much more open communication.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Liam. Joseph, 1 minute. What would your key takeaways be?
1 minute additional takeaway. I realize I'm introducing a new one, but I think this is really important and feeds back into some stuff which I have seen. The product disclosure statement, or PDS, which you get as part of a contract of insurance, and it's a sort of standard brochure and booklet. It goes on for 60 pages. Even though the process is challenging, look, that thing's really your friend, and being familiar with it or talking to someone else to have a look over it if they've got the headspace gives you knowledge and gives you power in terms of what some of your entitlements may be. I think, and I don't want to suggest it's intentional, in the rush to kind of deal and resolve claims, not everything that you might be entitled to and how it's handled might be addressed. If you're going in clear-eyed and you've had a look at that and you can say, hang on, what about this thing at page 25? This is how it says my temporary accommodation will work. This is what it says will happen if the situation also destroyed a motor vehicle and I'm unable to travel it because of this disaster. Having that information with you can be so good. And look, there may be hurdles, there may be stresses, but you will have a bit of clarity because of that, and you can really build from there. So that's foundational.
Yeah, so that's a light bulb, isn't it? We don't want to, but we should be reading the PDS because it is about knowledge is power.
And it's so much, and it's easy to bury one's head, and they could be easier to read, but it is a really useful thing to have familiarity.
Beautiful. Thanks, Joseph. Kelly, 1 minute, and then I'm going to wrap up.
Back to Andrew's point that your property can be rebuilt, but you can't, and your loved ones want you around for a long time. If you notice changes in your own well-being, if you're having bad thoughts, if you're just not communicating with people like you used to, seek help, seek mental well-being supports. There's plenty available in your area. Remain connected with community, remain connected with people who are going through what you're going through. They'll understand you're good, you're bad, and you're in different days. And please don't feel that barrier, that sense of shame that people often tell us they feel, to speak to someone. We are not judging you. We are there to support you. Please keep us busy. We want to keep helping communities reach out for help. It's so important.
Thank you, Kelly. On that note, Kelly spoke about well-being support. And I just wanted to point out that we do have an upcoming, we have a recorded webinar on that with experts, Dr. Rob Gordon and David Younger. It's available on the Maribyrnong community website. We're also aware that tonight might be difficult. It might have brought back certain emotions. So please do look out for look after yourself, contact services near or around you, or speak to community members around you, as Kelly and Andrew have said. A recording of this webinar will be available at the council's website, and we will try and circulate it in as many platforms as possible. I really, really want to say thank you to Liam, Joseph, and Kelly. Thank you so much for your time and passion today. Huge thank you to you, Andrew, for your contribution of your lived experience and the fire behind this project. Shout out to Maribyrnong City Council, Georgia, Andy, Joanne, and all the other beautiful members of the council, and also the Community Recovery Committee. Thank you so much. And it's sharp 8 o'clock, and for once we are actually ending on time. Thank you, everyone, and have a great whatever is remaining of your evening.
Thanks
Thank you.
all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.